Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the tier list, basically. This is basically going to be a tier list for all of the survivor perks in the game. The date is wrong if you are watching this live. The reason for that is because I'm planning on over today and tomorrow doing the killer and the survivor. So the total cumulative date will be as of March 30th, 2020 for those watching. It's going to be kind of long. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go in order and we're going to look at all the perks in the game. And we're going to talk about what each of the perks do real quick. Why they're good or bad. If they're outmatched by other perks. And we're going to put them on a tier list. So, I'm old school. I have a paper tier list right here that I'll be going by. So, I have 5 tiers. So, what we have are your meta perks, which is your A tier. Okay, that's the top tier. That's something that you absolutely cannot, avoid. It is a good perk. It is one of the best perks in the game regardless. We have our B tier perks, which are very strong, very survivor-friendly perks that may have drawbacks. They may not have all of the uses in the world. They may not be the most effective use, whatever the case may be. Your C tier perks are situational, so they're a little bit further down. They provide a good benefit, but either they're too situational, the activation cost may be too high, they may be outmatched by another perk, or the benefit they give just simply isn't enough. Your D tier is, they give some form of a benefit, but there's the benefit that it provides is outweighed by something else. And your E tier has no benefit, or the benefit that it gives you is so small, it's not there. So we're going to stay alphabetical. For the first one we're going to cover is Ace in the Hole, and this is a C tier perk. Ace in the Hole is a mid-tier perk. What it does is it guarantees that every time you search a chest, you're going to get an add-on. More than likely, you're going to get 2. And it makes it so that you get better add-ons. Now, the downside to this is that you don't lose your you don't keep your add-ons when you escape the game. But with Ace in the Hole, you will keep any add-ons you had when escaping. So this is a perk you can use to just farm for add-ons in a game, which now becomes more valuable, considering that normally, if you don't run this perk, you lose your add-ons. Now, this may be good if you're trying to escape with certain add-ons. This may be worthy of a B tier, but if you're running a perk, which is much more valuable than, say, an offering, you could run a black ward. Or a white ward, sorry. This makes it so that you don't lose your add-ons, instead of running a whole perk slot based around it. This perk really only works if you search the chest. If you don't get to search a chest, you're not going to get much value. Next perk that we have is Adrenaline. This is a meta perk. Now, this is on the lower end of A. Because the disadvantage to Adrenaline is you're essentially playing the game with just 3 perks. However, when you get to the end of the game, you get 3 very large benefits. First is a killer specific. If you're playing against Freddy, you will wake up. This is valuable to you in certain situations for avoiding snares or pallets, etc. So this can be valuable. It also gives you terror radius. The second is that it will give you an automatic burst of speed no matter what that will override all exhaustions that you have. So if you're running sprint burst, head on, balance, lift, dead hard, does not matter. You will get an instant 5-second burst of speed to let you get to a gate faster. Or if you're in a chase, get out of a chase. And third, if you are injured or down, you will heal by 1 health state. So you'll go from dead to injured, and injured to full health. Now, this is sometimes a negative. For example, this perk is directly countered by no-ed. If the killer runs no-ed, and they hit you with this, if you were running dead hard, you've now lost that. The other big benefit is that it does reset your exhaustion. So, for example, if you just use your balanced landing or lift in a chase, and it's a 60-second exhaustion, and this perk popped while in chase, and you have it at tier 3 for 40 seconds, you now have less exhaustion before you can get your original back. The downside to this perk really is that if you don't make it to that point of the game, you don't get to use it, but the benefit it provides is too significant. The next perk that we have is Aftercare. Aftercare is going to be in the C tier. What Aftercare allows you to do is When you heal or unhook another survivor, or another survivor heal or unhooks you, you share auras with each other. This is not limited by range. There's no range limit on it. It's anywhere on the map. And this can affect up to 3 survivors. And you get to see their auras for what they're doing at all times. The downside to this perk is that, A, the other survivors seeing your aura may be able to use that against you. So you may have another survivor bringing the killer over to you while you're in chase. It also resets every time you get hooked by the killer, which means that this perk can be reset up to 2 times in a game, and if you have everyone revealed to you, whether healed or unhooking from healing or unhooking them, you now have to go out of your way again to get everything active, and this can happen twice. The other downside to this perk is that there's no real bonus other than knowing what the entire team is doing, and it's really only effective at tier 3. There are other perks that offer a similar benefit for less work that make it better. For example, Bond is better than this in my opinion. It is a much shorter range, but it lets you see anyone in your vicinity, which is maybe a bit better than just knowing where your team is at all times. And if you're running in a 4-stack, it's not as useful. The next perk that we're going to be covering is Alert. Alert is a B tier perk. Alert is a very strong killer detection perk. It makes it so that when the killer is breaking a pallet or a generator, they will, or a breakable wall if they're on Saloon, their aura is revealed to you for 5 seconds. Now, if they're undetectable while they are doing this, on your HUD, you will still get the little flashing effect of Alert, which some of the other perks, such as Dark Sense, do not give you. So this perk is a very strong detection perk. The only downside is if you are getting a killer who is not kicking pallets or gens or breakable walls because you're not on Saloon, you're not getting much value out of this perk. And 5 seconds may not seem like a lot of information. It's also not great, you know, if you're the one being chased. But this perk can let you know if you're not sure where the killer is, especially if it's like a ghost face, for example. If you're not sure where he is, and then Alert pops up, maybe you're not seeing his aura, but you know he's breaking something. So you know he's likely either patrolling a gen or in chase with another survivor. Next up, we have Autodidact. This is an interesting perk for me. I honestly have this perk in the D tier. It is a fun perk to run. It is an effective perk to run. However, the downside is the amount of setup that you need and the RNG of the perk. Now, this is, comparing this to something like Ace in the Hole, Ace in the Hole is a guaranteed benefit. Search a chest, which you may not be able to do, and you get something out of it. Autodidact makes it so that you, first off, you cannot heal someone with a medkit. You have to heal a survivor base. It makes it so that hitting skill checks at first causes the heal to regress, but then hitting skill checks causes it to bounce forward and get to insane degrees of filling up the bar. The downside to this perk is that you're at the mercy of the RNG. More than likely, you're only going to get 1 or 2 skill checks on the first survivor that you heal. So you have to go into this healing 2 or 3 survivors to get your stacks up. Secondly, if you can't run other healing perks like Will Make It or Botany because you don't want to heal faster. You want to heal slower. And third, most survivors are just going to heal with a medkit. It's very rare that you're going to get to 5 stacks, and once you have those 5 stacks, usually you've gotten 2 or 3 heals in the game, so unless you have a killer who's farming, or you're going up against a very hit-friendly killer, I'll say like an M1 killer, or a Legion, somebody who's going to be hitting you a lot. And it's also countered by slowdown perks as well, like Thana and Sloppy will just slow this to a crawl until you get to 5 stacks, to where there's no real point to this. It is a fun perk, it does have a decent value, but acquiring it is hard. The next perk we're going to talk about is Boil Over. I still put Boil Over in the C tier, okay? A lot of people tell me this is one of the worst perks in the game. I can get value out of it. This perk works well in a few instances. This perk works well against killers who are not familiar with maps. This perk works well against killers when people are body blocking. This perk works well against people in a Sabo meta. This perk works well if you are near hooks that have already been consumed by people being sacrificed. Which, that has actually, I actually got a wiggle off today with this perk. It obscures the killer's ability to see hook auras within 14 meters, and if you have a Sabo squad, this does work. The downside is that most killers are completely unaffected. Most killers already know the hook they're going to put you on. This does not work near the basement. This does not work if they have Iron Grasp, Agitation, or Mad Grit. And this does not work if you have a competent killer. Now, if you have a body block, if someone's body blocking, this perk gets more value. So this perk is very much... The reason why I put it in C tier, if you have... You know, if the killer is not running perks, or if your team is running perks. If your team is running Boil Over, this perk gets a lot of value, actually. Breakout works well with this. So I can't say it's a shit perk, contrary to a lot of people. I can get value out of this perk. And that, to me, is what I judge by. Borrowed Time. This is an instant meta perk. Borrowed Time is a perk that if you make a hook rescue in the killer's terror radius, the person you unhook will get the endurance hit for 15 seconds. This makes it so that they can take one hit of any kind in those 15 seconds, and they will not take damage. They will not die. They will instantly go to full health. They will instantly go to deep wounds instead of dying. And then they have 20 seconds to mend themselves. This perk is so good for making close range saves. This is the ultimate anti-camp. The downside to this perk is that it only works in the killer's terror radius. If you have a killer that can hide their terror radius, like Ghost Boy, or you have a low terror radius killer, like Deathslinger, or you're asleep and you're going against a Freddy, this perk does not work. But this is the best way to make sure you're not farming your team. There's no bad reason to run this unless you are going against a Doctor, a Freddy, or a full-on face camper. Botany Knowledge, this is a B tier perk. The only real downside to this perk is if it is worth the spot that it takes up. If it's worth the perk slot, it increases your healing speed and your healing item. So if you run a medkit, your healing item efficiency is increased by 33%. So if you run this with self-care, that means you only have a 20% slowdown instead of a 50% slowdown. And if you're running a medkit, it makes it so you heal so much faster because it's all stacks. There's no downside to running this perk. The value is really, is it worth the slot that you have to get the benefit of the healing? Especially if you're going up against a killer who negates healing, or a build that negates healing. You know, if you're going up against a killer with broken effect, if you're going up an ultra slowdown build. And this perk really only gets value if you're running a medkit or self-care. If you're running this perk without one of those two things, it's a bit of a wasted slot. So when I say, if the slot is worth running, you really have to be running another perk with this. So it's really taking up 2 slots. Breakout. This is a very conflicting perk for me. This perk is in C tier. And it's in C tier. A lot of people get value out of this perk. I personally don't. I don't get a lot of people that use it effectively around me, even at high tier. And I don't myself use it that effectively. The best place I personally get value out of this is actually on either Hawkins or Meatpacking. And that, if you're getting value out of a perk on those 2 maps as a survivor, by accident, it's not a great perk. The effect that this perk will give you, however, is very strong. When you are within a very close range of a survivor who is being carried, that survivor will wiggle out 20% faster, and you gain movement speed. The advantage to this is that you walk in front of a killer, getting them to swing. You have enough movement speed to avoid the hit, and they're able to wiggle off much faster. There are 2 downsides to this. One, This perk is completely countered by no-hit killers, exposed effect killers, and mad grit. Okay, that's the big thing. This can be countered. The second downside is that if you're not close enough, it's similar to Saboteur. If you're not close enough at the start when they're hooked to make the play, you may not get it. So this is fitting with the devs wanting to bring Sabo and wiggling off as the new flashlight save. This perk comes down to your individual skill and your teammate's individual skill, who is on shoulder. It also comes down to the perks. It's very similar to Boil Over. I'm putting in the same category. Buckle up. This is a garbage tier perk. This is a perk that has absolutely no value. What this means is when a survivor is downed and you are within 48 meters of them, you will see their recovery progress to know whether or not they're one tap or not. The only use of this perk is to, if you are in chase as the second to last survivor and the other survivor is down on the ground, you will know when they're one tap to get them up in the middle of the chase. The other benefit it gives you is that you and the survivor who are in the dying state, when you get them up to injured, will see the killer's aura for 6 seconds. If you want to see the killer's aura for about 5 to 6 seconds, you are much better off running alert. It will come up more often, and it will come up randomly when the killer is doing something. If this perk activates, you don't get the same notification that you do with alert on your HUD, and in addition to that, this perk is just simply not worth it. Of all the perks to run for a slug build, anticipating either you or another survivor is going to be slugged, this is not it. You want to run something else. The next perk that we have is Calm Spirit. This is a B tier perk. Now, this is the low end of B tier. This is not, like close to meta. This perk does two things. One is it makes it so that the wildlife is not triggered by you. Now, this means that you do not scare birds when walking in the environment, and this counters spies from the shadows. This counters one perk. The other benefit is that you do not scream when you get hit or you get downed. It also overcomes you screaming from other things. So, you are not going to be revealed by the doctor. You're not going to be revealed by the clown. You're not going to be revealed by Infectious Fright. This can counter a number of killer powers and perks. This will prevent you from countering Iron Maiden. So anything that involves you screaming and giving away your position, this will counter. And it counters spies. The downside is it's not the strongest ability. This is a tier 3 only. And I'm putting these in based off where they are at tier 3, by the way. This perk is only good at tier 3. You do not get any value out of this perk at tier 1 or 2, because if you do not get that 10 or 20% chance, and you're trying to counter, like, say, Iron Maiden, that is not good. It is a solid perk, though. It does counter a number of killer things, and the fact that you can counter, like, a Freddy trap, if you trigger it accidentally, this isn't going to work against a bear trap if you accidentally step in it, by the way. But it is going to counter something like a Freddy trap. We have Camaraderie. This is a C tier perk. I give this perk more love than some other people may. Many people say, well, it's a shit perk to run. Granted, it has a very limited use, but its very limited use is actually a lot stronger. What this is, if another survivor comes within 16 meters of you while you are on your second hook, the hook timer will be paused, meaning the timer does not go down. So instead of having 60 seconds, this perk can buy you an additional 34 seconds. Now, this perk works in a very specific situation. This perk works if a killer is camping, or if the killer is patrolling you because you're hooked near generators and they want to make sure you don't get up. What this perk enables you to do is your team to not have to rush right away to get you off hook. They can buy an additional 30 seconds. Now, this perk also has another value. If you get hooked and you are the last survivor on hook, and you're the last survivor, if you're on hook and you end up being the last survivor on hook, like let's say the other people escape or get out hatch or something like that, you know, or if they get moried or whatnot, you will get those bonus 34 seconds to struggle for the blood point, if that interests you. So it can be run as a bit of a blood point farm. The issue with this perk is that it activates in such a minuscule condition. You have to be on second hook. So killer mories you, or you die on first hook. Because you suicide, you lose all value. Disconnect, lose all value. And if a survivor doesn't come within 16 meters of you in that time, or if they pull you off hook immediately. But this works very well in a situation where you need to buy your team some more time to get the unhook safely. The next perk that we have with Dance With Me. This is going to be a C tier perk as well. This perk is outmatched by another perk we will cover later, which is why it's in C tier. The benefit that it gives you is that when you perform a fast vault, whether from a locker or a window, you do not leave scratch marks for 3 seconds. Now, this perk has a cooldown of 40, 50, 60 seconds. You know, the more you level it up, the more the lower the cooldown gets. The main issue with this perk is that there are actually two. First off, this perk has a cooldown. This limits its effectiveness, because if you are being chased, the killer, and you're fast vaulting, more than likely you may be injured, so the killer may be tracking off of noise or blood. Second, this doesn't work if the killer has line of sight on you. This perk only works if you're able to vault and round a corner and take advantage of it. If you fast vault and it goes on cooldown while you are in killer's line of sight, you get very little value out of this perk. In addition to that, not a lot of killers track off of scratch marks. So this is very good if you can round the corner. It's about a 50-50 chance you can get away with it. So, it has some value as an escape perk. There are better options, but there are certainly worse options. If you don't have anything better, you can get some value out of this. But you also have to realize when you pair this, you're pairing this with lift. You're pairing this with head-on. You're pairing this with balanced landing. So you need to really pair this with something else. Next up, we have Dark Sense. Dark Sense is a generic perk that every time a generator pops, the killer's aura is revealed to you for 5 seconds. When the last gen is popped, it's revealed to you for 10 seconds. This is actually going to be, in my opinion, a C tier perk. I'm taking this down a little bit. Now, I'm taking this down. This works regardless of where you and the killer are on the map. The downside is it doesn't give you a lot of information if you're in chase, or if you already know what the killer's doing. It's not a very good survive with friends perk. It's a good solo perk. And the other issue is stealth killers counter this, because you'll know if you don't see their aura, they're a stealth killer, or they're undetectable, which negates the value of it. Unlike Alert, which randomly pops up to let you know the killer is doing a specific action, that's the big drawback for this. This perk works well if you're planning on playing a solitary style of play. It can work as Survive with Friend as well. It lets you know, hey, the killer looks like they're chasing somebody over there, which means I might not want to go that way, I might want to go that way. I would say the real issue with Dark Sense is that it's so random if it pops as well. Like, if your team is not doing generators, you get less value out of this. Dead Hard. This is a meta tier perk. Hands down. Most of your exhaustion perks are going to be here. This could be a B tier perk, just because of the way dedicated servers work. This perk gives you no value half the time. This perk does enable you to stay injured more often, knowing you have Dead Hard to rely on to avoid damage and extend chases. This perk does work against certain killers. It works against trappers, it works against... I'd say it works against Freddy's. I mean, I'd say it works against a number of killers. It can work against Huntress, it can work against Deathslinger, it can work against Plague, and it can allow you to extend chases and it combos well with a number of other perks in the game that allow you to play around being injured. I would say the downside to this perk is single-handedly down to the fact that this perk, A, requires you to be injured. So if you go up against an exposed effect, a chainsaw, you know, or if you're full health and you're going up against that, you don't get value out of this. And if you do get pulled off hook, then you have to stay injured to get the value out of this, which may be what they want. And the big issue is the servers. But this is the #1 exhaustion perk in the game, if it works. We go on to page 2 now, and we are going on to Decisive Strike. Decisive Strike is not the #1 perk in the game. I'm sorry to say this. This is a B tier perk. And I'm going to explain why. Most survivors would say that the proper way to play killer is killer downs a survivor, hooks a survivor. Most killers are using barbecue, all the survivors say. So they look around the map with barbecue, they see there's this guy over there, so they go chase that guy off a generator, and they make him the new target. So the survivor immediately comes over and unhooks their buddy, who now has Decisive Strike. If the other survivor on the other side of the map is leading the killer on a chase, if they're competent, they can last for 60 seconds. Or if they're competent, they can last for 30 seconds, and that remaining 30 seconds, the killer has to go back across the map. Decisive Strike is only a perk that should work against tunneling, camping killers, or for toxic survivors who are trying to get value out of it. If you are using this perk, you are using this as an anti-tunnel. I pressed the button by accident, I'm sorry. You are using this as an anti-tunnel in solo queue more than you are actually using it. A lot of killers have options to counter this. First off, if you don't use it in those 60 seconds, whether by the killer leaving you alone, whether by the killer downing you and slugging you, whether by inactivity at your hand, like you're working on a generator or you're healing, and then you get into a long chase and you go down and it's expired, oh well, the perk is useless. Secondly, you get 2 uses out of this perk. You get 2 opportunities, and you only use it once, and if you miss it, it's gone. Now, you can bait this out by jumping into a locker or being grabbed. And it's not that hard to hit the skill check. So the chances of you failing it are the issue. The unintended side effect as well is it also moves the obsession onto you. So if you get Rancored or Nemesis, that's on you. This is a great perk to run if it works. Ideally, you shouldn't have to use it. And a lot of times, you're not going to use it. I think a lot of survivors like to run Decisive Strike, thinking they're going to use it, and then don't get to use it, because most killers are used to avoiding this, and then get very toxic if they then don't get to use it. Next perk we were going to talk about is Deja Vu. This is another garbage time perk. This perk has no value to you once you learn the map spawns for where generators are. This is also completely outmatched by other perks. Basically, at the start of the game, you get to see the auras of 3 gens that are in close proximity to you for 60 seconds. And then, every time a generator gets completed, you get to see the aura of the 3 closest generators to you. The value of this comes from maps like Hawking's, Meatpacking, or Lurie's, where finding generators can be difficult. In actuality, the only 2 maps that this perk has any effective use on would be Lurie's and Hawking's. These maps have also been in the game long enough to where most survivors who are not brand new to the game should use this. So I think this is a good perk to run until you hit about rank 15 or 16. Once you hit rank 15 or 16, you should start to be learning where maps spawn and how to identify them so that you don't need to run this perk to find generators. The value is that if you're holding a map, Deja Vu can track those generators for you. There's a much better perk for this. So, this has no value. The next perk would be Deliverance. Deliverance is a B tier perk. Now, there is one very large trade-off to this perk, one very small trade-off to the perk, and one very large benefit. So the small trade-off is that after you use it, you will be broken for 60 seconds, unable to heal. You can pair this with Decisive and make yourself damage immune pretty much for the duration of this ability. Good 1-2 combo. The big downside, you have to farm this perk out beforehand. You have to get a safe unhook. If you don't get a safe unhook on another survivor, and I speak from experience today in having a survivor that immediately went down through borrowed time, thus denying me my deliverance. This perk has no value if you are the first one hooked. You have now lost an entire perk slot for the game. Period. However, if you do get that safe unhook, your first hook attack is a get out of jail free card. You are guaranteed to get off hook. Wait for the killer's terror radius to go away, wait for him to leave, unhook yourself. Great solo queue, less value in a survive with friend, but this is a great perk to run. The downside is, if you know more than likely you're not going to get this perk to activate because you're probably going to be first one on hook, whether you're somebody who gets chased easily, if you're going for a build that doesn't allow it, or if you're just having bad luck, you're not getting value out of this perk. The next perk that we have is Detective's Hunch. This is a B tier perk. You can make a case for it potentially being a C tier perk, middle of the road. The value is that every time a generator pops, basically any auras, the auras of gens, chests, and totems within half the map are revealed to you for 10 seconds, and they can get tracked if you're carrying a map. The key here is mostly to note for chests and totems. Again, most survivors know where the gens spawn on maps. Not as many survivors are comfortable with chests and totem spawns to the degree that somebody like I am, or some of the other major, I've devoted a lot of hours into this game, or they just don't play this game enough to really care. This is basically something you run if, okay, I'm going to pop a gen, I'm going to pop a totem. I'm going to pop a gen, I'm going to pop a totem. If you're trying to work through and prevent no-ed, it's good if you're running a chest searching build like Ace in the Hole. This perk gives you some value. The disadvantage is this perk is really only good for completing a secondary objective, unless you're trying to gen rush. If you're in a chase as well, you're not going to get value out of this perk as well, because you're not going to be able to stop and do a totem. But you can use this as Survive with Friends to say, hey, okay, there's a totem over here, and there's a totem over here, let's get those out, especially if you're affected by a hex perk like Devour or Ruin, or if you're afraid of no-ed. This is a great perk for countering that, and because it's an aura reveal, it's a very precise location. Even if you just memorize while you're in chase the basic location, like if you know it's the last totem as well. The next perk that I have is Distortion. This is a perk that I am going to give a lot of love to. This perk, in my opinion, is a meta perk. This is a sneaky, under-the-radar perk that has one singular drawback to it, and that is if the killer is not running an aura reveal of any kind, this perk has no value. However, the knowledge that is gained from this perk is insane. In a Survive with Friends, this perk, or even in a solo queue, this perk is single-handedly one of the best perks you can run for information on killer power. This perk can outright confirm what perks they are running. Fast vault a window, lose a token, I'm all ears. Killer, it's a clown, they throw a bottle on you and it hits you, Ebony. Survivor aura reveal. You're running up against a doctor, you know he's running an add-on that reveals you when you get shocked and your madness goes up. You're healing in terror radius, nurses. Survivor cleanses a hex totem, retribution, although you lose 2 off that. This perk single-handedly gives you so much knowledge as to what the killer's doing. So once you lose that first token and you identify what it is, for example, if the killer hooks the survivor and you're on the other side of the map, you know, barbecue, I need to get into a locker next time. So as soon as the survivor gets picked up, if you don't want to lose any more tokens to protect yourself, you want to save those to see if they're running something else, then you get into a locker. You can use this to get so much information and confirm what a killer is running. This is an excellent, fantastic perk. You can make an educated guess of, oh, barbecue. But if you don't know, if you're just guessing, if you have like a hillbilly and he's just chainsawing across a cold wind, and you're not really sure, maybe getting into a locker is wasting a good bit of time. And if you get into a locker and he pulls you out, and he didn't have barbecue, you look like a dunce. So, this perk gives you a lot more information than it will, I think, people give it credit for. Fixated? I'm going to put this as a B tier perk. Yes, I know, I do believe in a lot of the survivor perks in the game, but don't worry, we'll get to some shittier ones. Fixated has two primary benefits. First off, it lets you see your own scratch marks at all times. This is a very strong benefit for you as a survivor, for understanding when you are running, how the killer sees you. Now, if the killer's not near you, this lets you see how, you know, okay, I'm running, this is what the killer is seeing, so that in chase you can adjust as well, and know that if you run by this object, this is how scratch marks will look. It also lets you walk faster when you're not injured. This basically gives you a reason to not run when you are not in chase. This lets you walk very slowly. It works well with other perks that are a much lower tier than this, that are based around not running. Because this gives you the benefit of seeing your own scratch marks. And it's actually better than most of the other scratch marks. For example, this is better than Dance With Me in my opinion, because it has a consistent 20% walking speed bonus as long as you are healthy, and you can see your scratch marks, so you know what the killer is going to see. And it does work while you're injured, versus Dance With Me, which is a periodic safety net. I think it's a strong perk. It's not like a game-changing thing, but it's something strong to run. For the people, I had this at a B tier perk, as an insta-heal perk. I had this as, this is a very strong perk. It's C tier. I'm dropping it. Oh fuck. I'm dropping this perk. I really am. So, why am I dropping this perk? Let's explain what this does. This perk makes it so that while you are at full health, you can walk over to another survivor, downed or injured, heal them, press E or X or A. I don't know what switch is, sorry. Not to be offensive, but yeah. And that injured survivor is now up. And that healthy survivor is now, or that injured survivor is now healthy instead. What it does is it gives you the broken effect, and you're injured for 90 seconds, and you become the obsession. Two issues I have with this. A, you become the obsession. I don't think that's a needed part of this perk, and if the killer's running Nemesis or Rancor, well, you're fucked. Anything involving the obsession now is on you. So unless they're running Dying Light and you don't want to deal with the penalty, so you say, fuck it, give me the obsession, and you use this just to do it. The other value to me is that this perk has one use, and that is in an insta-heal, where a survivor has not been recovering, you can run over real quick, pop the insta-heal, and get them back up. The trade-off is now, instead of having a healthy person and a dying person, you have two injured people, which can potentially result in two dying people. If you have a killer who, like, say, the Huntress, who immediately is able to just recover and throw two hatchets and hit you at long range, this perk loses all value. You now have two people dead instead of one. This perk loses so much value. The other issue is, you, after 90 seconds, which is longer than Deliverance. I think it should be 60. I think it should be scaled down. I think it should be 60, 90, 120, as opposed to 90, 110, or 90, 100, and 110. I don't think that works. I think it should be 60, 90, 110, 120. Because you very rarely are you going to be able to use this perk, run away yourself, not go down for a minute and a half, spend another 15 to 30 seconds healing yourself, and then use it again. You have to understand, you're dedicating a minimum of 2 minutes, realistically, to this perk between uses. For an effect that you may not get to use more than once or twice a game. Is it game-changing? Yes. Like camaraderie. Is it very rare? Yes. And it's definitely not a solo queue perk. Trust me, you're not getting this to work in solo queue. People are going to crawl away from you. People are going to run away from you when you try and use it. I don't have borrowed, so I'm making a safe unhook. Hey, hold still. Let me heal you with this real quick. They're gone, and they're down, and now you look bad. Head on. I am not in love with head on like most people are. It is a B tier perk. It is not an A meta perk. Now what it does is it allows you to stun the killer by exiting a locker. If you've been sitting in the locker for 3 seconds, you can exit the locker and stun the killer. There are 2 effects to this. One, you can use this to stun a killer so that you can just, well, get a stun and buy 3 seconds of chase. 2, you can use it to get a save. If the killer walks by the locker, you can head on and get that juicy save like a flashlight or a pallet. It does give you exhaustion. This perk can be ran with another exhaustion perk, like Dead Heart. So you can have head on for a situation where, you know, hey, I need to get into a locker. It works well for a locker build. However, locker builds are very high risk, high reward because of the fact that if you get pulled out before this activates, before those 3 seconds are up, where you can then use it, or if you get pulled out while using it, now you're on hook. This combos well with Decisive, Quick and Quiet, Dance with Me, Inner Strength. There's a number of perks this works well with. But the ideal situation, using it in Chase requires either Decisive or Quick and Quiet. Outside of having those 2 perks, you can't use this in Chase. So this is a perk that requires setup on your part. A, not being exhausted, and B, realistically not being injured, because a smart killer is going to see Pool of Blood and hear you and get you. So this perk to me is not the A tier meta perk. A lot of people say, I think there is enough of a risk to warrant the reward possibly being outweighed. And it's also a perk that once the killer knows you have it, they're going to avoid lockers for the rest of the game once they know one person has it. Next up we have Hope. This is a C tier perk. It's a C tier perk because it is a solid perk, but it's not an overwhelmingly great perk. This is a perk where, when the exit gates are powered, you will walk faster and run faster for the next 2 minutes for 7%. Now, this perk counters the speed boost that no one has. And this perk against slower killers like nurses, death slingers, hags, huntresses, spirits is evil. You will be able to outrun them so fast. It'll be like a free dead hard against some killers. However, the trade-off is that, realistically, if they do catch you, the perk doesn't have much value. As well as, it is only for 2 minutes, and they activate as soon as the gates are powered. So it's not like this is active during endgame collapse. Additionally, this perk is like Adrenaline, where it's you're only playing with 3 perks until then. And Adrenaline is superior to this. So it's a decent perk to have, but it's not necessarily the best perk. The next perk that we have is Inner Strength. Now, I will warn you, I have a personal bias against this perk. Okay? So fair warning. This perk is a D tier perk to me. D. So, the reason why. The way this perk works is you cleanse a totem of any kind, then you get into a locker, and if you're injured, you'll heal in 8 seconds. That is half the time of a med kit. It is a quarter of the time of a self-care, and it is the fastest way to heal without an insta-heal. There are two downsides to this perk. First, this is a limited use perk. At a maximum, you can get 5 uses out of this. Maximum. The more totems that the other survivors cleanse, the less use. Realistically, you are only going to get 1 or 2 uses unless you're in a full survive with friend and are saying, hey, I'm running inner strength, don't touch the totems. Now, this does encourage people to do secondary objectives, like totems, chests, etc. It also works well in a locker build, decisive, quick and quiet, head on. A, you cannot use it in chase, like quick and quiet and head on. B, you cannot run this perk without decisive or head on. Period. Because you're not getting inside a locker with the killer near you and a pool of blood. Mind you, if you're injured and the killer has very recently injured you, and you get inside a locker in terror radius, and you're healed, oh boy, he's gonna know you have inner strength. You're not healing that quick. If you're a smart killer, you know, that survivor was healed in 15 seconds, and I'm running nurses. There's no way that they healed without me knowing. I got Iron Will, I've got Strider. I know they don't have Iron Will. I've got nurses. There's no fucking way they're healing. You know what? I'm checking lockers now. And if you get pulled out of a locker, not only does this perk deactivate, which it doesn't tell you, it says it when successfully triggered. If you get pulled out of a locker, you lose it as well. You're also now on hook, which is a lot more severe than being injured. This perk is more likely to get you killed than it is to heal you. If you want to use it, that's fine. I think it's a training wheels perk, in my opinion. I think it trains you to prioritize totems. That's what I think it does. I don't think it is useful for actually healing. I think self-care and botany are better. There's no limit to the amount of times you can use them. They're all purpose. They can affect other people as well as yourself. The next perk that we have is kindred. I'm going to give kindred a bump up to B tier. I'm going to do this because I think kindred now is becoming more valuable as you get more desperate killers and more toxic survivors in the game, to where over-altruism, with multiple people crowding the hook, becomes a detriment to you as a survivor and your chances of escape. Therefore, I'm going to say that this is a good perk. This lets your team see, when you're on hook, this lets your team see what everyone is doing so that you're not crowding hooks. You can get safe hooks. Not everybody goes down at once. This lets you see if the killer, lets your team see if the killer is camping. If you don't know who the killer is, this lets you know who it is. While someone else is on hook, it also lets you see your team is doing, so that you can know, hey, I should go for that unhook, or hey, I need to stay on this gen, they got this. The knowledge that this gives is strong. Again, it's similar to botany. Is it worth the slot you're taking up? The next perk that we have is leader. Leader is a D tier perk. Leader makes it so that pretty much everything except generators that other survivors do while near you is faster. Healing, which can include healing you. You can use it as a poor man's botany. Saboing hooks, not that the speed bonus is really needed anymore. Unhooking, not really that the speed bonus is needed. I mean, if you want to make sure you don't get grabbed off a hook, this can help. Cleansing totems, opening exit gates, and searching chests. Those are the main benefits I find. It's a random leader bonus while you're just by running by someone that gives you 15 seconds of doing these events faster is nice. I think it's more of a survive with friends perk, and that limits it. In solo queue, it's very rare unless you're not running self-care and you want to make sure you get healed faster. The main downside is that A, you have to be near other survivors, which can be a risk because killers will tend to find groups of survivors and chase them away. and the value is not as strong. You don't benefit from this. If you benefited from this, maybe. You guarantee your actions. If another survivor, for example, is not hitting, you know, their skill checks, well, then that healing speed bonus isn't great if they're failing the skill check and not getting heals on you. Next perk we have is Lift. This is an easy A tier perk. It is an exhaustion perk. The only downside to this perk is it is map dependent. A map that does not feature very many vaults, you do not get value. It also doesn't work if you get hit through it in some cases, if you get dedicated. Other than that, this is a great chase perk. It makes it so that you can extend or avoid chases or just straight out win chases. So this is a very strong perk to run. I would say it's probably right now, because of dedicated servers, the second best perk, exhaustion perk, behind Balanced. I think it's in front of Dead Hard. In terms of consistency, I would say this is probably the second most consistent. It's very good. You just fast vault. You can control when you use it. You just fast vault, and you instantly have a big burst of speed. It's great. Lucky Break. Oh boy. I'm going to say Lucky Break is a C tier perk. What Lucky Break does is it makes it so that you do not leave trails or pools of blood for 3 minutes while injured. So what this accumulates over the game. So it's 3 minutes of actually leaving this. So for example, if you're healing, you don't have that pool of blood below you. You know, if you're on hook, you'll still leave it. But this makes it so trails of blood. Why is this important? Well, this counters some add-ons, like Sloppy. It doesn't counter the speed impediment, but it counters the mangled a little bit, because you're not hemorrhaging blood. You know, if they're running Bloodhound, if they're running, like Spirit, for Father's Glasses, there are a number of things that this counters, and a lot of killers at higher level do track with blood. I would say the downside to this is that you, A, have to pair another perk, like Iron Will, or maybe Lightweight, or Fixated, to cover another effect. Because just because you're not leaving pools of blood, you're still making noise because you're injured, and you're still leaving scratch marks. So the other ways that killers will commonly track, this works well if you want to prevent that. All in all, it's a decent perk. Medal of Man, I'm going to put this in C tier. This has received quite a big boost. This is not the hardest perk in the game to activate now. The way this works is you need to get 3 protection hits with other survivors. So just it's not hard to do that. You take a hit before you unhook somebody, and then you take a hit again and go down, and there's 2. You can take a hit while they're carrying a survivor. You can take a hit for an injured survivor in chase. Very easy to activate. You need 3 of these hits, and then the next time you go from injured to dying, that's the caveat, you don't. You get an endurance hit. The aura reveal is kind of fishy. That's kind of glitchy. There's only 2 downsides. A, you have to get 3 protection hits, which means generally you need to take a hit, run away, heal up, then come take another hit, run away, heal up, then take another hit, and you either need to then run away and heal up, take a hit, and then take another hit, which will activate it. Or you need to, at taking the 3rd hit, take another hit, you burn it right away, but it works. I ran this the other day. It did not work right for me because I healed to full health, and he had no ed, and I was on death hook, so I lost this perk entirely. So I spent an entire game farming this perk up for it to not work, but the value that it does is very good. And the fact that it has been buffed a bit, where it's no longer by a basic attack, makes it stronger. You can dodge a chainsaw with this, which is nice. It's received some buffs to make it a bit more viable, and I think it is. It's a high risk, high reward. Are you willing to farm some safety hits out, run away and heal up, and then have a nice dodge of death, or is it too much work for you? Oh my god, we're only now on page 3. No Mythic. Okay. No Myther is a balanced perk. Controversy. It's C tier. dead center in the middle. This perk makes you permanently injured for the duration of the game. It also makes it so that you can recover from the dying state an unlimited number of times. The trade-off is that you go into the dying state a lot easier. The downside is you can get up from the dying state as often as the killer lets you. Most killers aren't going to let you if they know you're no mythic. It also causes you to not leave pools of blood, which means killers cannot track you as easily. And it has some built-in iron will, in that you make grunts of pain, you make less noise. The benefit to this perk is to combo this with other injury-related perks. Dead Hard, Resilience, This Is Not Happening, Unbreakable, Tenacity, to get the value out of this. This is also a bit of a toxic BM perk, like, brah, I'm better than you, come at me, bro. So this is a good way to play the game in a harder difficulty. It is also a good way to practice playing around being injured. I would recommend, if you want to play at a higher level, avoiding self-care, like if you avoiding self-care and avoiding Dead Hard and avoiding Adrenaline and those key meta perks and just want to get better at looping a killer, I would say run no Myther, maybe in a Survive with Friend, where you have someone to back you up, to practice, to get better at looping. Because a killer seeing you with no Myther is more than likely going to tunnel you, because they know you're easy bait. But I do think it's a balanced perk. I don't think it's the utterly worst perk in the game, the trash perk, the meme that everyone makes fun of it. I think it has use. It requires you to get the value out of it with the rest of your perks, and not getting a tunneling killer. No one left behind. This is a D tier perk. It went up from an E to a D. Kung Pao! Hold on a sec. Get over here! My dog is an evil little shit. My apologies. No One Left Behind is kind of a shit perk. What it does, like Hope and Adrenaline, is it activates when an exit gate is powered. Oh, I'm sorry, no, it doesn't activate when it's powered, which makes it even weaker. It's when it's opened. So now you can use this perk for up to 2 minutes. Okay? First off, you see the aura of all other survivors. No matter where they are. Not bad. Lets you know if someone's trying to, like, get hatched or something. And number 2, it gives you a bonus in speed and blood points. Now, the issue with the 100% more blood points for healing and unhooking other survivors, and the 50% action speed bonus, is if you're running this perk and you're planning on, okay, I'm going endgame, that means you have to plan on you and your team making it to this point. It's also not as significant as, say, Adrenaline to get you up from the dying state if you don't have Unbreakable and you're on Death Hook. Or, you know, if you're going up against a Freddy or something like that. This perk is a lot more significant, is a lot less significant, sorry, than the rest of those perks. Next up we have Object of Obsession. And I am dropping this perk down to D tier. This perk gives so much information to you as a survivor. You can see the killer's aura by looking at them. However, the killer can see your aura by looking at you. And it applies outside of terror radius, which means stealth killers most of the time are immune to this. There are some stealth killers that are immune and some aren't. Like Tier 1 Myers is immune to this, but Ghostface isn't. Or, I'm sorry, like Wraith. Wraith isn't in Cloak. It's odd. It really is. You run this perk, you will get tunneled to death. More than no Myther sometimes. This perk is another BM, come at me bro type perk to run. And it is only a Survive with Friend perk. Run this solo queue at your own peril, boys and girls. Here's why. You running this perk, you need to know how to use it or you instantly lose. Like, as soon as you spawn in, you need to call the killer out. as soon as you see... Okay, so let's say certain killers suffer more. Like Freddy, Hag, Trapper, they suffer more than Bubba or Billy. Billy, on the other side of the map, chainsaws over to you. You say, he's coming right at me, go away. You can let people know, okay, there's a trap over here, there's a trap over here, there's a trap over here, there's a trap over here. Problem. If you're not constantly telling your team what the killer is doing, for example, killer's over at this area, breaking generator. Killer is collecting trap. Killer is patrolling this generator. Killer is... And giving your team play-by-play on what the killer is doing, you're going to spend more time giving play-by-play than actually playing. And if you get tunneled to death, you lose all value, pretty much. So, run this at your own peril. Lots of information at a big fucking cost. Off the record. This is a D tier perk. Yeah, I told you they were going to start piling... The low tier perks are going to start piling up now. This page is full of some. This activates after you've been unhooked, whether by yourself or someone else, for 80 seconds. First off, there's two problems. You can only use it twice per game, and it has a timer on it. Now, unlike other perks, this causes your aura will not be shown to the killer, and you will not make any noise while injured for those 80 seconds. There are two problems with this. One, this is Iron Will. And two, this is Distortion. And three, this is a usable only twice per game, sometimes only once, if at all, for up to 80 seconds, versus running Iron Will and Distortion and getting Iron Will's benefit the entire game and Distortion's benefit 3 times as opposed to 2 times. This perk and by the way, this perk also does not let you know if your aura is not being shown, like Distortion does, so you lose the information benefit. This is a decent solo queue stealth perk. It has no value in that this perk does not give you a strong enough benefit compared to 2 other perks in the game. Yes, you could run the other 2 perks instead of running this, but there's no point to doing that. Doing that, the other 2 perks are both stronger than this perk. Period. Next we have open-handed. I will give open-handed a slight credit. This perk helps a number of perks. Mostly Bond and Kindred. Those are the first 2. It increases the aura reading range of those perks by 8 meters. Now those perks are small ranges. Kindred, for example, is maxes at 16 meters, which means this perk is extending it to 24. And Bond is, I believe, 32, so this extends it to 40. The fact of the matter is that those are realistically the only 2 perks that this benefits. Buckle Up is non-existent, so we're not going to count that. Most aura reveal perks are either have no range limit or cover 50 to 100% of the map. For example, Empathy and Wake Up are essentially 100% of the map, unless you're on a Red Forest map, pretty much. Running this with Plunders increases it to, what, I think Plunders 3 is, what, 6, is it 64? I think it's 64. I'll check it soon enough, but. We have Pharmacy. This is a situational perk. It's a chest search. Pretty much all of the chest search perks are in C tier. What this does is it gives you a green medkit the first time you search it. You search all chests faster, and you don't make as much noise when doing it. Basically, this makes it so you don't get caught searching a chest unless you do it in front of the killer's face. You always get a green medkit your first time. So, as long as you get to search one chest, you pretty much get 1 heal. Which is nice. It's a decent, I don't want to run self-care perk, and it's decent if you want to pair it with something like Ace in the Hole or Plunderers and say, hey, I'm going to run around and search all the chests for you guys so you got some better shit. But that's all it really does. Again, is it worth the perk slot? The benefit's not as strong as something like a Botany, where yes, the benefit is worth it. I mean, it's a decent filler. Poised. This is a B tier perk for me. It's a high B tier. Every time a generator pops, you don't leave scratch marks for 10 seconds. Why is this good? It's basically dance with me, but you have control over this. First off, you can use this in a chase to break chase. It's 10 seconds. You can break line of sight in 10 seconds unless you're on a rotten field. Additionally, this works out of chase by letting you run to another generator for 10 seconds without the killer really having a way to track you. If you're healthy, you don't make noise, you don't leave trails of blood, and you don't leave scratch marks. This is a map that lets you objectively rush around the map and complete objectives, not just generators, but you can rush to an unhook without the killer knowing. Like if the killer is like monitoring to see if there are scratch marks, this lets you dodge that. This also gives you some stealth. If you're in chase, you know, you can rush over to a totem and get it before a killer knows the scratch marks are there. And the funny thing is, it's not like you just you don't leave scratch marks. That means if you're not just gonna have scratch marks randomly appear once it runs out. It's a solid perk, and you don't have to activate it as long as the gen is done. Premonition. Oh my god, this is a garbage tier perk. It is completely outmatched by a far superior perk. And the reason for this is if you look in the direction of the killer within a range limit, it goes ding and goes on cooldown. This is outmatched by alert, in which you get to see what the killer is doing anywhere on the map without you having to really do anything. This is worse than spine chill, which is, hey, the killer is coming to get you. You get a notification that stays as long as they're looking at you, and you get a repair speed bonus. This perk has a cooldown for going ding. It no longer counters killer stealth. If it countered killer stealth, I could maybe say, well, it's D tier because it counters certain killers and perks. No, fuck you. Garbage. Don't run. Next. Prove thyself. This is meta. I don't want to hear it. The gen rush is real right now. The gen rush is the undisputed king of the game. To where killers sit there and go, gen speed is fair and balanced. And DC, after 3 gens pop all at one time. This perk negates the speed penalty of another survivor working on gen. So let's put it this way. Let's break it down. With no great skill checks and no toolboxes and nobody else on a gen, a survivor will complete a generator by themselves in 80 seconds. A survivor, 2 survivors working on a generator, with no great skill checks and no toolboxes, will complete the generator in roughly 50 seconds. I believe it's 44 to be exact, 44 or 46, but I'm not sure. We're going to call it 50. We'll call it 50 seconds, so less than a minute. This perk removes an additional minute. They can complete a generator in 38 seconds. I've timed it. It's 38 seconds. That means 2 people, both running Prove Thyself on 2 opposite generators with a person with them, can potentially pop 2 generators before a killer can traverse the map to chase them. It also has a blood point gain as well, which is always strong. This is a very solid perk. The only real downside to this perk is it only works when you are on a generator with somebody else, which means you're going to get countered by discordance, but nah. It's a good gen rush perk. We have Resilience. This is a B tier perk. The benefit of Resilience is that it is a flat 9% action speed. It's just a 9% bonus. Repair, sabotage, heal, unhook, vault, cleanse, opening, searching. Everything a survivor interacts with, they do faster. The downside is you have to be injured to do it. You can choose how to use this. If you don't run self-care or something like that, and you have to stay injured, but if you don't have a med kit, it basically lets you do stuff faster. You vault faster, so maybe you don't get hit through that window. You get totems out faster, so maybe you can get that no-ed out before the killer comes over and gets it. You're still probably going to go down, but nonetheless, you can get that gate open faster. You can also stack this with other abilities that give you bonuses, like Leader or Spine Chill, and get more benefit out of that as well. It's a solid perk, but the thing is you have to be willing to be injured in order to do it. If you have no choice in the matter, it's a solid perk to run. And if you're going up against a killer who wants you to stay injured, like a Plague or a Legion, it's a very strong way to counter them, unless they can stop you, like with Thana or Dying Light. And considering those are really the only 2 perks in the game right now that cut out, like, gen speed, it's a strong perk. Unless they run Thana, you can really, there's nothing. Saboteur has gotten a buff, in my opinion, to C tier. I think it's a perk that it has a set build. If you notice, I have chest builds in C tier, and I have Sabo builds in C tier. It requires other perks to be effective, like No Mither, Boil Over, Breakout. I think they need other perks. I think Head On does as well, but Head On has a much stronger benefit. Basically, every 60 seconds you can Sabo a hook, so you can farm some blood points. You farm a hook, you Sabo the hook real quick, and you can see hook auras. It's nice because you can annoy a killer and get a Sabo save. The downside is it requires another perk realistically to get some value. And if you're just bringing it to farm blood points, you're only doing it every 60 seconds and you have to give away your position. The other trade-off I would see is that you have to be in position, kind of like Breakout. You have to be near the survivor as they're being picked up. I think I would like this perk better as well if the benefit was while the survivor is being carried or on hook. I would then say it has a bit more value. While they're on hook, I'd like to see the other hooks as well. Maybe that's just me being an entitled survivor. Next up we have Second Wind. Second Wind is a C tier perk. It is similar to Autodidact in that the activation cost is more than likely not going to be achieved easily. I think the benefit is better. Basically, you need to heal a survivor for another health state. Now, you can do this with botany or medkits, but you'll have to do more of it. You need 1 full health state heal. So if you're using, like, botany and you get, like, 2.5, you know, you'll fill it up. Basically, after you get off a hook, unhook, or another survivor, you become broken for 30 seconds, and after those 30 seconds, you will instantly heal the full health. It doesn't work with, like, Deliverance or For the People, you know. And if you change health state, then it activates. It will override borrowed time as well. I do want to mention that. A lot of people don't understand that. This is a very good way, as in, I'm going to bully the killer a little bit if they're trying to tunnel. Because if you have borrowed, you can use this to override and get an extra hit and kind of like heal up on the go. Especially if there's a generator nearby that you need to complete, you can just unhook, don't waste time healing, get on the generator, you know, buy yourself a little bit of time with the chase, and you're full health. You can tank an extra hit. I think it's solid, but it requires a lot of prep work that you may not be able to get. And the fact that you can realistically only use this up to twice a game is a drawback. It's basically a lower tier version of Deliverance. It's not as guaranteed as Deliverance is, but it has the same problems. Self-care, meta perk. It's the top perk in the game. It lets you heal without other survivors. Yes, it's slower, but that control is immeasurable. If you are going up again, if you're going solo, I think you need self-care. It makes it so you do not have to rely on other survivors except to get you off of hooks. That's it. You control your chases, you control your gens already. This makes it so you control your healing, which is a key, because if you're losing those chases and you're losing those gens and you have to heal a lot, this is what you need. I think a lot of survivors don't understand how important being able to heal on their own is and being able to control it. Yes, other survivors healing you is faster. Yes, other survivors healing you gives more altruism to the team. If you're having a bad skill check day, or if you know survivors are having a bad skill check day, you don't let them fucking heal you. Run self-care. End of story. Soul Survivor. Oh god. I honestly think right now, this is an E tier perk. I cannot justify running it. The issue with this perk is, first off, it only works when your team is dying. A survivor has to die. Then it works where the killer cannot read your aura within a certain radius. That means a minimum of 1 survivor has to be dead for this perk to work, which is counterproductive. And it pretty much makes it so that you can cut out, like, nurses 1 or 2. And then 2 survivors have to be dead. And now you can cut out all of nurses, all of, it is a weaker version of Distortion. The only thing that this perk is really good for is if you can get it up to if all 3 survivors are dead, it cuts out barbecue when that last person dies. That is about all this perk is good for. Yes, you can use it to cut out object, but again, the fact that you have to basically run object to make this viable is an issue. This is a decent perk at 1 or 2 stacks. I think it needs more value to it, to be honest. They need to change this perk, because this perk is bad right now. You're not using this perk. More than likely, you're going to die before you get to use it. Spine Chill. I'm going to put this in A. I'm going to make this a meta perk. Spine Chill is a repair speed bonus that just requires the killer to fucking look at you. They don't even have to be chasing you. It makes it so that repair, sabo, healing, unhooking, vaulting, cleansing, and opening, and searching, basically everything that resilience does, is faster. So it does everything that resilience does in making you faster, not as big, it's 6% instead of 9%, but the killer has to be looking at you within 36 meters. But if the killer is not chasing you or is not paying attention to you, that is a free bonus. In addition to that, you know the killer is near. This counters stealth killers. It counters all stealth killers. Undetectable killers. You have Spine Chill on. Ah, he's coming. Time to go. This gives you a good idea when it's time to stay and when it's time to run. And if you can use that 6% against a ghost face to pop a gen before he can grab you, oh boy. Yeah, buddy, that's a good thing. But again, the trade-off is, you know, I think it's a solid perk. It's a killer detection perk. It's a repair bonus. I think it's all around good. It lets you know when to stay and when to go. Alright? Sprint Burst. This is another controversial perk. I am putting this in the D tier, along with Inner Strength. I have 3 quote-unquote meta perks for Killer and Survivor that I put in low tier. This is 2 of the 3. Okay? Sprint Burst is a bad perk. I'm going to explain why. It is a great perk because it's an exhaustion perk, and it gives you an immediate burst of speed to get away from a killer. The issue is, it activates by running, by just pressing L1. This means you cannot use it with a large number of perks in the game. Better exhaustion perks. Now, you can control when to use it, compared to something like List, where you need a vault. However, the downside is, you have to walk everywhere. Which means you now need to run Urban, or Fixated, to make this perk better. It also can be randomly wasted just by forgetting you have it on. So unless you're one of those people that runs Sprint Burst every single game, you lose a lot of value out of this perk. It also doesn't work if you get jumped. You get jumped by the killer, and they hit you before you activate it, or you're trying to 99 it, well, you lose it, because the burst of speed doesn't stack with it. If I'm being honest, this is a perk that does not have a lot of value to it. I think this is a perk that you can get value out of, but you're not going to get value out of. It's the training wheels perk for exhaustion perks on how to avoid killers. That's all it is. And on enclosed maps, you're fucked anyway, so. Stakeout. This right now is a C tier perk. It is a shame. I do like Stakeout. First off, it works by, you're in the killer's terror radius, and for 15 seconds, you get a token. You get up to 4 tokens. It makes it so the good skill checks become great skill checks. There's a decent amount of value to this. One, it makes it so that you don't necessarily have to go for that great skill check. Especially if you're going up against, like, Huntress, or Unnerving, or Doctor, and you're not sure you're going to hit the great skill check. It lets you get healing and gens done slightly faster. It also has a good detection perk. It lets you know you're in the terror radius. If you're not necessarily paying attention, especially on a large terror radius killer, if they're running Distressing, to where you could be at the faint edge and not know, this perk helps you with that. I do believe that. So it can be a detection perk, and lets you get stuff done. But realistically, if you're hitting great skill checks, or if you have a stealth killer, you don't get a lot of value out of this. I think if they made it where you're in chase, you could stack it up, kind of like diversion. Or, well, on a hook at least, like diversion. The issue really is that you can use this as a knockoff stakeout, but I think stakeout's a bit better than this. That's why it's a C tier perk. And if you're hitting great skill checks, or you're not getting skill checks, you lose some value as well. Streetwise. This is a C tier perk as well. What it does is it makes it so that your items last longer for you and allies within a shorter range. It's better than leader because your items lasting longer is usually better. This means maps, flashlights, toolboxes, medkits and some keys are going to last longer. You get more value out of your item, considering that toolbox have been nerfed, considering that medkits usually don't have a lot of charges on them, maps don't have a lot of charges. If you think about it, the object with the largest base amount of charges in the game is a ranger medkit or a commodious toolbox, which have 32 charges. That's 32 seconds. This adds an extra quarter to that. That's a pretty decent amount, and it affects allies. The downside is Franklin's unnerving presence, not having an item, allies not having an item. Other than that, this perk is solid. So it just comes down to if you're planning on using valuable items. This is not happening. Oh my god. This is a garbage tier perk. The value of this perk is so low. First off, it's only active when you're injured. Resilience is better, Dead Hard is better. It makes great skill checks 30% zones, 30% bigger. Not effective. Run stakeout. You don't have to be injured to use that. And it's automatic. Not to mention, it doesn't work with, like, autodidacts, doesn't work with doctors. I think this perk is probably one of the worst injury perks in the game. It needs a buff. If it made your overall skill check zone 30% bigger, I could say, fuck it, go ahead. You can run no myth or anti-dot for all I care. Nah, this has no value. If the killer runs unnerving presence and you run this is not happening, well then basically you're guaranteed to hit a great skill check. If you hit it, I don't know. Not good. Unbreakable. This is a B tier perk. Now it is absolutely God tier if you can get it off. If the killer slugs you and you get it up and you're out and you recover that one time per game from dying to injured, it's a godsend. If you use it in front of the killer's face and go down again, well, you're fucked. And if you've already used it, you're pretty much fucked, because it basically means you can get to one tap a lot quicker, but you still can't get up on your own once you've used it. Most killers are not going to pick you up right away. So that's where you lose a lot of the value on this perk. I would say this perk is a good perk, but it's entirely dependent upon the killer. If the killer doesn't pick you up, the perk gains all of its value and its meta. Perk picks you up and you don't get to use it every time, you have no value. This pairs well if you think the killer's going to be afraid of decisive. I will say that. You can run decisive as a decent bait out, but you need to make sure that somebody else is using decisive. Because now they're going to think, oh, well, he used decisive, so he's going to have decisive, and then you can bait the unbreakable. Up the ante has no benefit. None whatsoever. Period. This increases luck for every other remaining survivor. To all remaining survivors. This means at best you have 9% increased chance to unhook, which is increasing your base unhook chance from 4 to 13%. You have 3 opportunities to escape, which means you are now looking at a 39% chance of escaping. You are not going to have great odds with that. It also makes it so that you get it out of a bear trap slightly easier. No, it doesn't. This perk is completely worthless, and the longer the game is on, the more worthless it becomes. Next, we have Urban Evasion. This is the last of my meta perks that I will shit on, and that is Urban Immersion, as we like to call it. This makes it so that your crouch walking speed is equivalent to your regular base walking speed. The issue with this perk is that you generally do not need to crouch walk around the map. Right now, with the way gen speed is, survivors have the advantage. Running around and popping gens while another survivor is being chased is a very good strategy for getting to the end of the game faster. For getting through games faster. Urban evasion works against killers who... First off, it works for blendettes. It works for characters with dark-colored clothing to hide in dark-colored maps, in tall grass, and avoid the killers that way. But they don't necessarily need urban evasion to do that. The downside... The advantage to me for urban evasion is countering hag. I honestly think this is the one killer in the game you can counter. I don't think you can realistically say you can counter this killer. Because most of the killers with projectiles, you can just duck and avoid it anyways. Although, good luck dodging the beach whales that Huntress throws. The value of this perk really comes from, I want to stay low and move around the map quickly. But there's no use to this perk if A, you're in chase, because you're going to be running, and B, if you know the killer is not near you. This is a good perk for avoiding the killer if they're near you. And in that situation, you may actually just be better off crouching, standing still, wait for them to turn around, and then run away. So you have a head start. Because if you are trying to urban evade, I see this happen all the time. If you're trying to urban evasion just out of line of sight, and you actually have a killer that's paying attention and finds you, well, this perk is completely meaningless, because you're gonna be like, he doesn't see me, he doesn't see me, he doesn't see me, whack, oh my god, he saw me, no! And now you've lost all of your speed, because you've now lost the first second of your adrenaline hit from having to run away from being hit, because you're now going from the transition from crouch to sprint. So you've lost your first second there, and you've now been injured. I would say this perk is only realistically good if you know you're playing against a hag, or if you know you're playing as a blendette. It's a D tier perk. And those survivors that want to justify it as an A tier perk are the ones that are running it because of that. Vigil, it's in the same category as Streetwise. It makes you and your allies recover from status conditions slightly faster, 20%. It's C tier, it's middle of the pack. If you think it's worth the perk slot, put it in. If you don't have anything better, if you want to mess around with a meme type build like me, it's middle of the pack. The only real benefit that you could justify is for the 20% exhaustion. So, you know, think about it. You recover, let's say, 40 seconds. It takes you to recover your exhaustion with a tier 3. You know, you work on a gen. This makes it even faster. So if you get chased off the gen and the killer knows you're running that perk, you might be able to get that exhaustion perk back before they think you do. And it works for allies. It works for timed things like hindered, blindness, hemorrhage. So, you know, you're countering a lot of killer add-ons. You're countering clowns. You know, things of that nature. Countering sloppy. Oh, well, no, you're not really countering sloppy, because that lasts until you heal. But you do counter a decent amount of perks. You know, you're going to be countering Blood Echo. I think Blood Echo's a lot stronger than people think. It can, but Pebble works without Urban. That's the key. If you're running Urban to try and get other perks to get value out of, like, say, you're running Urban because, okay, I want to get Pebble to work, I want to get Stakeout to work, anything, like, involving being in the terror radius. Like, I don't use Pebble with Urban because I don't need the Urban. I'm either going to avoid chase in the first place, or if I get into a chase, I'm just going to take it and try and win it. I'm not going to use Urban to try and avoid a chase for longer than I need to. And Pebble is a sneaky perk. Wait till we get to that. Pebble's in B tier. I'll give you the spoiler alert right now. We'll Make It the B tier perk. I think We'll Make It is a solid perk as a... I don't want to call it a poor man's borrowed time because it has a completely different use. We'll Make It is the quick, let's heal you up. I know the killer is over here, and they're probably going to come back, so let's get you healed up so you can tank a hit. It's the fastest healing speed in the game. It doesn't work on you, and it doesn't stack. Let's start with that. It's you heal twice as fast, so you're going to get a heal off in about 8 to 10 seconds. After you unhook. It's one of the strongest altruism perks in the game. I would say it's probably second behind Borrowed, because Borrowed basically guarantees the safe hook unless you have potatoes, which I do, as you can see from the fact that I have gone from rank 1 to rank 5 in the span of 5 days. It's not been great. Which is why I'm taking the time to put this video up instead of playing. Well, people not running Borrowed is a big thing. Will make it a great backup to Borrowed, but it just doesn't replace it. It's like, just there. It's just short. Especially because if the killer has the exposed effect, that means absolutely nothing. So now on to the green perks, which we can go through a little bit faster. Any means necessary. I'm going to give this perk more love than people will as well. I think this is actually a relatively strong perk. It is a B tier perk. This perk's really only negative side, in my opinion, is that if the killer breaks the pallet, you don't use it. Every 2 minutes, you can go and reset a downed pallet. Killer doesn't break shack, you get the shack pallet again. If you get a killer that's trying to mind game pallets, and you have a survivor that is just wasting these pallets like nobody's business, or even just getting a map with a lot of pallets, Saloon, Hawkins, Empathy I'll talk about in a minute. Borrowed you can. I used to run Will Make It and Will Make It and Borrowed on Nia. If I was in Terror Radius, you had Borrowed and ran away. If you were outside of Terror Radius, we used the Will Make It. But that's running 2 perks to do 1 job type of thing. That's why it's B. So, nah, you're good. That's the whole point of this. For any means necessary, I think the strength of it is that every 2 minutes, you can run around and pick up a pallet. And people say, well, this is really only good on safe pallets, and they're so... No. If you're a good survivor and you know how to loop like me, it becomes, how long can I loop this before I throw the pallet? Then it becomes, how long can I loop this before they break the pallet? And if they're a killer that I'm not going to be able to loop it like a doctor, where he's going to shock me, so I have to throw it early, and then he's either going to break it, or he's going to try and mind game it and shock me to keep me from using it, this perk gets even more value. I don't think a lot of people really understand how much value this gets. Because you can use this on unsafe pallets. Even if you have to throw it early, there are a number of killers that you can get value out of against this. You can get tons of value with the Deathslinger, because you have to throw it early, so he shoots you over it. You get deep wounds because he can't hit you through it. Even an unsafe pallet that he can't hit you through, but that it's unsafe because it's mind gameable, if he shoots you over it and you drop it and then he tries to mind game it so you run to the next one, if you break chase, come back and pick it up. You can abuse that for the same game. I think a lot of people don't understand the power of this perk and just shit on it because, oh, it got nerfed on PTB. So, yes, this is a strong perk, and I think you should give it some consideration. Babysitter, I literally call this perk Baby Borrowed. If he breaks the pallet, you lose the perk anyways, but if he breaks the pallet, there was nothing you could do there anyways. If he breaks the pallet, you completely lose that loop anyways. So if you're a survivor that is going to try and if you're going to throw the pallet to get a stun, he doesn't break it because he's dedicated to the mind game. And trust me, I get chainsaw only billies that do this all the time. You can keep looping that until he breaks it. You're not going to get value there. The issue is in a situation where you get a killer, if you can make a killer mind game themselves to where you can get the pallet back up in those 4 seconds and stun him with it again. I've done that a fair few times before. It's worth it in that situation as well. Mind you, 4 seconds in chase is a decent amount of time. Even if another killer gets distracted, just being able to reset the pallet that you threw down because he saw another person, this works incredibly well if you're trying to make a save on a survivor too. Let's say a survivor is being chased, they go down on a pallet, you're nearby to get the pallet save, the killer comes over to try and chase you off it, you throw down the pallet, and another survivor can swoop over with any means necessary, pick up the pallet, and the down survivor off of your mistake, people don't really understand the power. Like, that would be a completely wasted play right there. Not only did the survivor go down, not only was the pallet wasted so you couldn't save the survivor, and now you have another injured who is another survivor who is at least injured and potentially down. Thus, 2 people and a pallet were wasted. This perk can remedy almost all of that if the killer doesn't break it. So I think that is a stronger perk. I think people don't give it the respect it should, maybe. Babysitter's strong if you're going up against a shitty killer. It's baby borrowed. The benefit of this perk is that when you unhook a survivor, it's supposed to be an anti-tunnel in that the survivor you unhook doesn't leave scratch marks or blood trails. Now, mind you could get lucky break, and you could get this as the survivor being unhooked and have this for a lot longer. Or, hell, you could run poised, or lightweight, or fixated, all of which are better effects because they last longer than this. And you choose to run it rather than, oh yeah, this guy just randomly gave me no scratch. First off, it doesn't work in terror radius. Let's start with that. Because, hey, the killer sees the unhooker's aura for 4 seconds, which means, oh, that's where they are. They're unhooking in my face. Let's go tunnel. Again, borrowed versus this. I will put it in D tier just because of the fact that, you know, there is a slight value to it. It's not complete trash. It's just not good. Balance landing, I would say right now this is the best exhaustion perk in the game. Balance landing is, you know, again, it's like list, it's map dependent. If you don't have a map with high drop downs, you don't get the value out of this. It does more things than the other perks as well. Think about it. First off, you don't make noise when falling, and you recover faster, and you get the burst of speed. And considering that falling from a second story, killer has a massive advantage over survivor, this removes that negative. This is a very strong perk to be running. Dead Hard is, I've already covered that. It's basic, it is A tier. It's simply the fact that dedicated server right now, balanced, lift, Dead Hard. That's the order you want to run them in. Balance is stronger because you're less likely to get hit while trying to use it. Then lift, then Dead Hard. Dead Hard is literally 50-50 right now with the servers. Period. You press X and you wind up on the ground exhausted half the time. Sprint Burst, I've already talked about. Sprint Burst is D tier. That's the one I shit on. I get there's 3 meta perks I get to shit on. Inner Strength, Urban Evasion, Sprint Burst. You're not going to convince me otherwise. They're training wheels perks. Urban teaches you how to avoid killers. Sprint Burst teaches you how to get away from killers. And Inner Strength teaches you how to do a locker build. And to cleanse totems. There's no value to those perks other than that. But they provide a benefit, so I can't just be the angry man ranting on YouTube and putting them in the garbage tier even though I want to. Better Together, I would put it in D tier. I can make a case for the C tier. I can make a case for saying there's value. First off, the value of the aura of all of your generator that you are working on is revealed to all survivors within 32 meters. I do not consider that to be a positive. I do not necessarily, unless I'm running Prove Thyself, want other survivors to come touch my generator. Especially if the killer's running Discordance. Especially if the killer's running Surveillance. Especially if I know they're not hitting skill checks. Especially if I know they can't escape chases. So if he is running Discordance and he comes over, and they can't escape chases, so they just sit there and hog the pallet and camp it, while I'm being chased around the generator, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. It can be nice on maps where people don't know where the gens are, Hawkins, Larry. I would call this the better deja vu. That's what I would call it. But I don't think it's really a great perk. I think the real benefit is, if the killer downs a survivor while you are repairing a generator, you see the aura of all other survivors for 10 seconds. My issue with this would be then run Kindred. Kindred is better than this perk because you see what they're doing as long as the survivor's on hook. So it's not really timed. I mean, you can get up to 2 minutes, and then again, you have to factor in Kindred still works when that survivor is dying and floating up to the pearly Dead by Daylight gates. So there's another 10 seconds. You can get 2 minutes and 10 seconds out of Kindred versus 10 seconds every now and then. So I think it's D tier. I don't think it's really that strong. Bond is a B tier perk. Bond is an aura reveal perk with toxicity. Empathy is going to be involved. I'll talk more about empathy. Bond's strength, well, it's 36 with 8%. It's 44 meters with open-handed. I was wrong. I was off by 2 meters. Fuck. But, Bond is a solid perk for two things. You can use it, again, better than better together, to find teammates to work on gens or to heal. It works on any allies within 36 meters of you. They don't have to be injured, which is a condition of empathy. Granted, the range is shorter, but they don't have to be injured. So, that's a trade-off. You can use this at the start of the game, unlike empathy. The trade-off is you could also use it to avoid the killer with this perk. If you know another survivor is being chased, and you see that survivor running towards you, well, you know it's time to leave. Empathy is a great way to figure out what your team is doing, and it doesn't really require an activation. It just lets your team see what you're doing as long as they're nearby. If they're on a gen, if they're on a totem, if they're on a gate, if they're healing. Whatever it may be, you can go over and maybe give them a hand or maybe steer clear. It's good knowledge, so it really just comes down to how you use it. The issue is mainly, okay, are you going to get your team killed with it, or are you going to play by the rules? Breakdown. I'm going to put Breakdown in B tier, believe it or not. Breakdown is similar to Botany Knowledge for me, in that I think the value of this perk is it worth the slot that it takes up? Because it is valuable, but is it worth putting in your build? Anytime you are off the hook, so again, you're only going to get to use it twice per game, if that, the hook automatically breaks. What it doesn't tell you is that the hook is broken for 3 minutes. And considering right now, Sabo is maybe 45 seconds with a toolbox with an add-on, this hook breaks it for 3 minutes. That's pretty strong. That makes that part of the map slightly safer. Ever so slightly safer for you to loop with. And it also shows the survivors, or the killer's aura to you, anywhere on the map for 6 seconds. Which is the best part of Buckle Up, realistically. So you're taking a shitty perk and taking the best part of it and putting it on a better perk anyways? Yeah. I can give it the nod for B tier because it is a solid anti-tunnel. Decisive and Breakdown is a mean 1-2 combo if you want to camp a certain part of the map. Like, if you're in a part of the map where the generator's done, and you want to buy your team some time to get the rest of the gens done on other parts of the map, loop the killer with Breakdown and Decisive, buddy, and tell me how that killer's going to be feeling. Because he not only has to either wait out 60 seconds for the Decisive to run out if he downs you again, or you can loop him some more, but he's got 3 minutes where he's not hooking you there. So you're going better. Well, my thing is, Breakdown is like one of the few Sabo perks that you don't need to run Sabo with. It just works. I mean, I think it's solid. I think it's solid on its own. People can disagree. I'll give them their credit. That's why I have it in B and not A. It's nowhere near an A tier. It's not like I need to make a slot for this. But it's a lot. Again, it's like any means necessary. I think it's better than people give it credit for. Speaking of those, Diversion. As you know, I like my detection perks. I personally have Spine Chill as A tier. I think it's the best killer detection perk. I have Stakeout in B tier, and the reason why is Diversion is not RNG like Stakeout is. So basically, as long as you're not in a chase, and you're in the killer's terror radius, it ticks down, and then it fills up, and you press X, or A, or E, whatever you're on. I'm sorry, Switch, again, I don't know what you use. And you throw a pebble. And it doesn't throw it very far, it's only 20 meters. And it's entirely on the killer if they fall for it. The value is entirely. You can bait some plays, okay? You throw a pebble, you get an unhook. You make the killer figure out what's going on. You can piss some killers off by running Diversion. You can piss some killers off by sitting there and throwing some damn pebbles and saying, hey, go over there. 4 people running Diversion, working on generators. As soon as someone blows a gen, you throw a pebble somewhere else, and just everyone throws pebble in unison. Killer doesn't know what to do. You can fuck with some killers. This perk pretty much relies entirely on the killer's ability to use it, but the fact that it lets the survivors have an additional mind game beside, "Oog, I survivor, I run around paladin circle, oog," gives it some value. I think it's a decent perk. You have to get value out of it, and you have to have a killer you can get value out of it with. Empathy is a perk that I hate. However, I will give empathy the benefit of the doubt that it is an effective perk. I hate empathy in that I have been killed more times by it than I've been saved. But I give it credit. It does its job. Basically, empathy makes it's a C tier perk, by the way. I'm going to put it right in the middle. You can't argue on that. It's right in the middle. It reveals injured or dying or allies auras. Basically the entire map. 128 meters, unless you're on something like a red forest map, and you're in one corner of the map, and they went down in the opposite corner of the map, you're gonna see it. It makes it so that you can see them. You can use this for two ways. Okay? There's only two uses you can really use this. One is to go towards them, and the other is to go away from them. If you're going towards them, there's two uses. One, it is to heal them. Two, is to bring the killer to them, which is kind of a dick move. And because it has a longer range on it than Bond, it's a real fuck you to that injured survivor. "You can't run from me, you injured son of a bitch! Get this killer off me, I'm a tunneling survivor!" Yes, there are dickheads that do that. The other way you can do it is the proper way. I'm going to run over and heal you. You can also use it as an anti-chase perk, because if you know someone gets injured, well, they must be getting chased. If they get injured out of nowhere, you know they must be being chased, so you can see realistically where the killer is. My issue is I just think Bond is better. I think Bond is better. It's a shorter range, but it's easier to activate. The killer doesn't have to do anything, really, for you to activate Bond, whereas I think with this, the killer has to do something, unless you're running full no mither. I mean, I give empathy credit. If you run a full empathy no mither squad, I give you props on that. That's some balls right there. So, I like that. Flip-flop is an interesting perk. It's a C tier perk. It's middle of the road again. People are going to say, "Oh no, it's garbage." It fits in the same mold that Unbreakable. Now, it's not as guaranteed as you get up once per game if the killer lets you. This is a perk that basically, if the killer doesn't let you get up, but they've been letting you think about it. They let you get to that 99 and they say, "Nope, no, I know you have Unbreakable. Fuck you, get on my shoulder." Well, now you basically turn around and tell the killer, "No, fuck you, I'm getting off your shoulder," and you can wiggle off. Is it a valuable perk? No. Does it fit well in a Sabo build? Yes. This works well with Breakout, Boil Over, Saboteur, Unbreakable, Tenacity. There's a lot of perks you can pair this with to make this valuable, which gives it more value. And, again, this is like Boil Over. I can get this perk to work a lot more than maybe other people. Therefore, I'm going to give it a little bit more love than other people might. Yeah, it counters slugging, and slugging is pretty prevalent now because people overuse decisive, and because people try and crowd hooks. Flip-flop is great with something like an Unbreakable Tenacity. It fits a Sabo build, it fits a slug build. I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty middle of the road. It needs some love, but there's the big drawback. Same with Unbreakable. You don't get picked up. If they pick you up right away, you don't get a lot of value with this. So, Iron Will. First off, I have to judge this on tier 3. Let me be clear on this. This is just like Calm Spirit. Tier 1, tier 2, worthless. Do not run them. They are a waste of a perk slot because just because you're reducing it by a percentage, if you're not completely cutting it out, okay, I have ears. I can still hear you. All I have to do is jack my volume up. It counters anybody that's afraid of decisive. Any slug perk, tenacity, unbreakable, flip-flop, just to name the 3 most prevalent, will counter any slug killer. This means you can run decisive, or if somebody else is running decisive and the killer gets afraid of it, and they're avoiding lockers and picking people up, this perk gets immense value. Any of these perks that are based around slug get value against slug killers, billies, onis, bubbas, etc., or killers who are afraid of other perks. So, Iron Will, very strong. It makes it so that they can't track you based off of sound. Again, this does leave scratch marks and blood, so it takes away one of the ways a killer can track you when you're injured. I would say this is a very strong perk. I put it in B tier. I do not put it in A tier. I think this is an injury-related perk, like Resilience or Dead Hard. Personally, if you're asking me, I think the other perks are better. You can get additional chase benefits from Iron Will while you're injured that you can't do without this. You can do window text, pallet text, stuff like that. I think, however, good killers are kind of experienced at countering this. Unless you're really running like the full blendette with the Urban and the Iron Will and the Self-Scare, who just crouch walks away in Yamoka or Cold Wind and then heals up, and then runs out of nowhere like the Roadrunner to teabag the killer and get back in chase. I mean, a dedicated build like that's gonna piss a killer off because they can't do much without nurses. So, this is a very strong perk, but I think as well, if you're not getting injured in-game, you know, this perk has no value. And if they're able to track around blood and scratch marks, this perk has no value. Left Behind is D tier. This is a perk that you run for solo queue, for getting your team killed and trying to get hatch, or for trying to farm for blood points for hatch. Fun fact, this works if it's open or closed. People don't realize that. People think it only works if it's open. That's not true. This can work if you have a key. If a killer sees you have a key, I know if I see a key, I'm immediately thinking anything involving a key, which is Left Behind. Is it valuable? Yes. Problem. It works if you're the last survivor remaining. So if you go and get your team killed to use this perk, you're a dickhead. Fuck you. But this can potentially get you out of a game. If the hatch has already been closed, this perk doesn't do anything unless you have a key. And if this hatch is open, and you don't know the spawns, but again, that comes with practice. That's why I think it's like Detective Hunch. I just think the situationness of this perk outweighs its benefit. I have gotten it to work, but this is not boil over. You're not using this multiple times a game. You're using this once. Hey, no problem, man. I'll probably catch you later. I've usually been running with a stack that can be kind of toxic. So, I pick and choose who I play around, but it'll be up on YouTube if you want to see full. It's in alphabetical order of the perks, so just skip ahead to where you think I left off, and then fast forward or rewind a little bit if you want to see a specific perk. And I'll have the killer video up tomorrow as well. I'll be doing that tomorrow morning. So we have Lightweight is our next perk. Lightweight is an utter garbage perk. I'm sorry. It's the bottom of the barrel. Here's my issue with Lightweight. When Fixated came, it completely reduced the effectiveness of this perk. Yes, this perk reduces how long your scratch marks are actually up. So if the killer's not paying attention, they can potentially lose you. I think Fixated is better. I would rather have the knowledge of what the killer is seeing than, oh, I guess these scratch marks are gone now. And again, this doesn't do much against killers who can track off of sound or blood. So, nah, I don't think this is an effective perk. I think if a killer's tracking you with scratch marks, and then this perk might get value. That's a pretty big if. And I don't run a perk slot based around a pretty big if. I'll run it around a maybe if, not a pretty big. Plunderer's Instinct is a C tier perk. It's a chest search build, like I said. Most of your chest builds, most of your Sabo builds or slug builds are C tier. It makes it so that you have a better chance of getting greens and purples. And it makes it so that you can see the item auras, and you can see the chest auras if they're unopened. It's great for seeing what other people have found. Oh, that looks like a toolbox over there. Let's go see what it is. I think the value of this perk is if you're going in to search a chest and say, let's come out with something that might change the game. Kind of like Ace in the Hole and Pharmacy. They're in the same boat. They all do different things. Basically, Pharmacy makes you harder to detect when doing it, and you get a green medkit. Ace in the hole means you keep your add-ons, and you get add-ons every time. And plunderers means you can find it easier and get better stuff easier. It's pretty much you just a toss-up between those three. Quick and Quiet is B tier. I think it's a good chase perk. I think it's the superior option to Dance With Me. I think it has more value because it has a shorter cooldown. I think it has more value because you can use it with other perks more effectively, like Head On and Lisp. I think the value is, if you can round a corner and use it, yes, they may see scratch marks, but they may, if not getting that noise notification, they may not know it. This is basically the bread and butter to put with Head On. If you want to run a Head On build, I would say this. Either this or Decisive. And it's Toxic or Chase is what you have to decide. Because if you have Decisive active, obviously you hop in the locker, you use the Decisive, you Head On them when they recover, and now you've gotten 2 stuns and occupied the killer for a good 15 seconds. Versus, you can use Quick and Quiet in Chase to get in the locker, make them think, and then when they realize, oh wait, they were in the locker, and then stun them, you can maybe buy another 15 seconds maybe. But I think it's a good chase perk. It's a low cooldown. It's half the cooldown of Dance With Me, which is why I give it the nod over Dance With Me as well. Red Herring's I'm middle of the road C tier perk. I wanted to give this perk some more love, and I got to use it. I honestly, playing around this perk does 2 things. It works well in a locker build, like Head On, where you're like, okay, I can use this in the killer's terror radius, make them think the gen, somebody blew a gen, they'll go check it, and then they'll come back to me, and I can Head On them when they run by. Is it better than Quick and Quiet? No. Can you fuck your team over with this accidentally? Like, if you start working on a gen and get chased off it, and then all of a sudden get into a locker to avoid a killer, and your teammates were on that gen, and they don't pop it, and the killer goes over, oh, that's not good. It's basically diversion for a locker. The cooldown's not really the issue for me. The cooldown needs to be there. People said, oh, this perk would be better without cooldown. No, the cooldown needs to be there. If the cooldown's not there, then what's to stop all the survivors from work on a gen for 3 seconds, get into a locker? Boom! Work on the gen for 3 seconds, get in a locker. Boom! And annoying the killer, kind of like diversion, when everyone throws the pebble in unison. But, it's a solid perk. You have to get value out of it. And if the killer doesn't go to that generator, you lose all your value. So, there you go. Slippery Meat is a D tier perk. The value of this perk is the extra opportunities to Kobe on first hook. It's pretty much outmatched by all of your other hook perks. It's outmatched by Camaraderie. It's outmatched by Deliverance. It's outmatched by Breakdown. It's outmatched by Second Wind. It's outmatched by Borrowed. It's outmatched by Woman. Anything involving hooks pretty much outmatches this perk. It's there if you feel like you get in a trapper. And it's there if you feel like you need that extra Kobe. If you need 6 shots to get off the hook because your team ain't doing shit. And usually, you're not going to know if you need to use this because you're trying to buy your team some time to come get you. Right? I mean, this is a Vigo's jar of salty lips and okay, fuck it, let's go type build. That's about it. It's D tier. If you Kobe, you Kobe. We'll all give you a round of applause. And that's about it. Small game? Honestly? E. Garbage. Now, there's a reason for that. It makes it so that traps and totems are revealed to you when within a short range. And it has a cooldown. And it also only goes ding like premonition. It doesn't show you the aura. If you're using this to counter totems, I would highly like to recommend you to one Detective's Hunch. Complete a gen, which helps move the game along. You see all the totems within basically half the map. There you go. Have at it. And they're tracked if you're running a map. Or if you just have good memory. As opposed to, ding, it's somewhere over here. Find it. Now, the main benefit for this would be traps. Well, what traps does it work on? Now, it used to work on certain killers. When it was glitched. For example, it would work on Billy if he was in his chainsaw because the chainsaw counted for whatever reason. Or Doctor, his terror radius, if he was in punishment mode for whatever reason. Let me explain to you. This literally works on 2 killers. 3, sorry, 3. Freddy, with pools, not pallets. I have tested it. Trapper and hag. It no longer works with pig either, which is kind of annoying. But, nah, this perk really has no value to me. I'm not... I mean, I guess it works against Trapper or Hag, so you know, oh shit, trap right there, time to crouch walk. Or, oh shit, don't vault that. But, other than that, I mean, the chance of you catching that, remember, if you're sprinting, and it activates within 12 meters as a ding, and you have a big beating terror radius going off, you're not going to pay attention to that and vault the window and step on the trap anyways. Sorry, not happening. Solidarity. Welcome to the shit bucket, green perks. We got another one to add to the list. This perk does nothing. This perk does utterly nothing. So, healing another injured survivor while you are injured. So let's start. Healing another survivor while you are injured without a med kit will give you 50% of the heal, not the full. Okay? There are 4 fucking caveats to getting this perk to work. Then, when that survivor heals you, you now have 50% of a health bar. Why would you run this? You're basically cutting off 5 to 8 seconds of healing speed. Run botany. Run leader. These provide better benefits. This perk has no value. I'm sorry. Autodidact is better. Get those big juicy skill checks where you get 5 stacks. You get some mad stacks, yo, and fill up a whole freaking health bar on 1 token. This perk is worthless. Sorry. Technician. It has 1 benefit right now. It's in D tier. Okay? Let's start there. Technician's 1 and only benefit is from reducing the noise of generators by 8 meters. So the killer may not think you're on the gen. This used to work where if others failed the skill check, 50% chance the gen didn't blow up. That doesn't happen anymore. I hit my fucking skill checks. The only time this works is if I'm playing against a doctor and I'm having a bad time with my skill checks. This perk right now is worthless. I mean, the only reason you're running this is to reduce the noise of the generator. That's why it's in D and not E. We have tenacity. And again, this is going in the C tier. Along with all the other slug perks except for Unbreakable and the Sabo builds. Basically, you can crawl and recover. You crawl 50% faster. You don't recover 50% faster. Let's get that clear. Some people think that, but you crawl a little bit faster, and you can recover while crawling. Pairs well with Unbreakable, no mither, flip-flop, etc. But once the killer realizes that you're crawling away, it either means you're trying to crawl to a pallet, or you're trying to cut, or they know you have it. And some killers, like me, can tell if you have it based off how fast you're crawling. You're like, whoa, slow down there, buddy. And they'll know to pick you up anyways. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Again, it's C tier. That's your C tier perks, pretty much. Wake Up. That's in the D tier. Wake Up does not have a significant benefit. First off, it only works when the exit gates are powered. So again, you're looking at No One Left Behind, Hope, Adrenaline, you know, these types of perks that only activate at the end of the game, so you have to play the beginning of the game, most of the meat with 3 perks. Not that hard, but again, you're looking at like Adrenaline and Hope are better than this. This makes it so that you can see the exit gates for basically almost the entire map. That's not that hard to do if you know the spawns. Pretty much it's only really if you get turned around in the middle of a chase and you need to know where they are. It makes it so that while you're opening the gate, which is the key, while you're opening, not while it's open, just while you're opening it for that few seconds. And mind you, this is also less time to do this because you open the gate faster as well. The main benefit is you run this to open the gate faster. I think Resilience is better. I think running Leader is better and having somebody else open it. I don't think this is a great perk. This perk basically counters Remember Me, and you can counter that just by being the Obsession. So, yeah, no thanks. Yeah, We're Gonna Live Forever. I'm going to put this in B tier. The downside to this perk is that there is no tangible benefit to this perk in-game. This only rewards you with blood points. However, there is no tangible reason not to. Let's say you were running... If you can run an Adept Survivor, which is 3 perks, just put We're Gonna Live Forever in and you basically have the same effect. If you can run, if you have the experience to be able to run, you know, just 2 or 3 perks, especially if you're running something like Adrenaline, where, you know, you only have 3 perks most of the game anyways, you know, if you can run We're Gonna Live Forever, you can double your blood points. You can make it worth your time playing a very toxic, grindy, my team is not doing shit type of game with this perk. The main issue is you only get tokens by safe hook rescues, which means not having the right perks, or your team or yourself making stupid plays will hurt you. And you can make this by taking a hit as well, a protection hit, so you can stack it with something like, you know, Breakout or Metal a Man and get some more value out of it. I think there's no reason not to run it, but the thing is, it doesn't give you any benefit in the game, so you can't say it's A tier. And it's a bit of a farming perk, so if your team is running it, they're more than likely going to farm you to death. And our last perk, after 2 hours, my updated survivor list would be Windows of Opportunity, which, I hate to end this on a sour note, is in the garbage tier. I'm sorry. This is a beginner perk similar to Deja Vu in learning pallet and vault spawns on the map. Once you get more familiar, this perk gets less and less valuable. The only value of this perk is to know if a pallet you're trying to run to is there or broken. If that's the case, why the fuck am I not running any means necessary so I can reset it if it's down but not broken? But then again, that's me. The other issue I have with this as well is this is a fucking cooldown as soon as you use it in a chase. Okay? Why am I running a perk that just vaulting a window that I know is there now puts this perk on cooldown when I need to know if the fucking pallet I'm running to is up? And while one could make the argument, duh, you have eyes, you can look over there first. How the fuck am I supposed to know that? I'm not thinking that far ahead if I'm in chase and I am on adrenaline and I'm trying not to fucking die and we have a tier 3 Myers that's trying to swing through every fucking vault. This perk doesn't help me when I need a goddamn pallet for a stun. Okay? This pallet shit, this perk is shit. Alright, so I will be doing the killer video tomorrow. I will probably be doing it in the morning. Thank you for watching. I apologize for taking up 2 hours of your time. Like I said before, if you missed a perk at all in there, or you just wanted some more information on it, just skip ahead forwards and backwards. They're all in alphabetical order based on how this is done. Thank you and have a good day.